Okay, so we're talking a little bit about the laws and customs of Rosh Hashanah as it's upon us and coming this week, this Wednesday night. So I'm going to begin by speaking about the special fruits and vegetables that we serve on the nights of Rosh Hashanah. So in Masechet Keretot, the Gemara records the custom of eating certain vegetables and fruit on Rosh Hashanah. So the Gemara itself lists 5 different items. Our custom is to eat 8 different items, and we'll discuss why. But the 5 that are listed in the Gemara are the gourd, the black-eyed peas, the leek, the Swiss chard, and the dates. So Maran Shulchan Aruch lists a 6th item. That's the head of sheep, and this is based on the writings of the Mordechai. The Mordechai was a Ashkenazic Rishon from the 14th century, and his source is the Geonim. So the Geonim are from Iraq, from the 7th, 8th century. That's his source to have a head of sheep on the night of Rosh Hashanah. So
does the Gemara say why we should be eating 5 fruits or 6? The rationale behind eating all this?
The rationale is to have a siman tov, to have a good start on a good note and on a positive note, start the year in a positive way. So the custom of beginning with a sweet apple and honey, this began as an Ashkenazic custom. Maran does not include it in Shulchan Aruch. Later on, Middle Eastern Jews adopted it as well, based on the fact that the Mekubalim, the Kabbalistic rabbis, saw in it Kabbalistic significance. They understood that the apple represented a Hakal Tapuhin Kadishin, which is literally translated as a field of holy apples, which is a Kabbalistic term that describes the Shekhinah, the presence of God. So, since they ascribed to it Kabbalistic significance, it became accepted by Middle Eastern Jews as well. And that's part of why we have it. It's part of why many have the custom to have it first. We're going to discuss as we go on the custom of which one is first. Are the dates first or the apples first? But those that serve the apples first, it's based on the fact that it's a very important item on that night because it represents the Shekhinah, the presence of Hashem. So it's also customary to serve a pomegranate as well. That's based on the earliest record we have of that is the Abu Darham. So Abu Darham was an authority on customs from Spain in the 14th century. So based on all these sources, we have the 5 from the Gemara. We have the head of sheep, which is Maran included in Shulchan Aruch, based on the writings of the Mordechai, based on the writings of the Geonim. We have the apple, which began as an Ashkenazic custom and was adopted by us through the teachings of the Mekubalim. And then we have the pomegranate, which was customary in Spain from the 14th century, at least from the 14th century, and that's the 8 that we have. Now, there are various opinions as to the order in which we should partake of the various fruits and vegetables. So if you look on the 3rd page of the handout, I compiled a list of the various authorities, and many of them are recent Middle Eastern authorities. And if you notice, you'll see that none of the lists are identical, meaning there's no real consensus, even amongst the recent Middle Eastern authorities, as to the specific order of the fruits and vegetables. The big mahloket, the big disagreement here, is whether we begin with the apples or the dates. So now, from a halachic perspective, you should make borei pri ha'etz on the date, because the rule is when you have several fruits in front of you, and they're all borei pri ha'etz, and some are from the 7 special species that are associated with the land of Eretz Israel, and some are not. So you choose the one that's associated from the land of Eretz Israel, the Shivat HaMinim. If you have several from the Shivat HaMinim, 7 from the special fruits, so there's an order of precedence based on the order that they're listed in the Pasuk in the Torah. The fruits that are closer to the word Eretz, takes precedence over fruits that are further from the word Eretz. So in this case, the date is closer to the word Eretz than the pomegranate. So if you follow the Gemara, the Halacha, we'll make borei pri ha'etz on the date. The question is, how come there are those that make borei pri ha'etz on the apple? So the poskim addressed this question, and they offered several resolutions. Some say that the custom is to bring out the apple before you bring out the dates. The dates are not supposed to be on the table at that time, and therefore you make borei priyatz on the apple because that's what's in front of you, and then afterwards you bring out the dates and the pomegranates, and since you already made borei priyatz, you don't have to repeat borei priyatz. That's one option. Another option that we find in the poskim is when they began with the apple dipped in honey, they actually took the apple and the honey that was dipped in honey and put it on a piece of bread and ate it with the bread. So the halakha is, if I make hamotzi on bread, usually it covers most everything that I'm eating in the meal, but it doesn't cover things that are not normally part of the meal. So it doesn't cover fruit, it doesn't cover candy. So if I want to have an apple in the middle of a meal, I'm having a sandwich, and I want to have an apple with it, I make borei priyatz on the apple. But if I take the fruit and put it on the bread, right, a piece of watermelon on the bread, then I don't make adama. I don't make ha'ayetz if it's on the bread. So they put it on the bread, and they avoided the problem of making borei priyatz on the apple. And then when they got up to the date, they made borei priyatz on the date. We found also a third option, and that's before you make hamotzi, meaning the fruits and vegetables, the special ones, you serve it after hamotzi. But before you make hamotzi, before you wash your hands, take something. One of the suggestions was take the pomegranate, for instance. Make borei priyatz on the pomegranate. Now you cover yourself with hayetz. You make netilat yadayim, hamotzi, and now you just eat everything with the yiratzon, and you don't have to make hayetz, not on the apple, not on the date. And if you're going to do this, most probably the best option is an olive, since the olive takes precedence over even the date, right? That's the closest out of all the fruits, right? There's the wheat and the barley; those take precedence over all the fruits. But among the fruits of the 7 special species, the one that takes precedence over all is the olive. So you can make borei priyatz on an olive before hamotzi. And now, when you come to do the yiratzons, if your custom based on the mikubalim is to have the apple first, you just say the yiratzon, and it solves another problem. Because the poskim deal with the question when you get up to the apple and you're going to have a choice between saying borei priyatz first or the yiratzon first. Which should you say first? So if you say borei priyatz first, then you say the yiratzon. It's like an interruption and hifsek between the beracha and eating. So many poskim don't accept saying the yiratzon first, but others object and say I have a choice. I have 2 things in front of me, a yiratzon and a beracha. What's more important? The beracha. That's our requirement. That's it's much more important. How do you make the ebed, the servant, come before the melech, right? And have the yiratzon first. So if you make borei priyatz on an olive first, so now you just go straight to the yiratzon. There's no choice. There's no competition between the yiratzon and the beracha. So you solve a few problems by approaching it that way. And in addition to that, there are many that throughout the year on Shabbat and Yom Tov, after Kiddush, before they wash their hands, they take an olive, they make borei priyatz, they take a pickle, they say borei priyatz. Why? Because we have to reach 100 berachot every day. So on a weekday, we have it throughout with the tefillah, just a little bit of eating, a little bit of routine, a snack here, a meal there, or the tefillah, you have 100 berachot. But on Shabbat, the berachot of the Amidah is much less. Even though you have an extra Amidah, you have 4 Amidot with 7 berachot. It's 28 berachot. On a weekday, I have 3 Amidot with 19. I have 57. So it's 29 difference of 29 berachot. I have a few extra berachot that I make on Shabbat anyway with kiddush and certain things, but we're still going to be short approximately 20 berachot. So if you look for different opportunities to add them, many Middle Eastern communities, not only the Syrians, Egyptians, Yemenites, Moroccans, many have the custom that after Kiddush, they make ha'ayetz, they make ha'adama, then they wash their hands and make alit ha'adam. So on Rosh Hashanah, it's a perfect option, especially if your custom is to have the apples first, right? In Halab, there were those that had the dates first, right? So as we saw, there's different customs. So some have the custom for apples, some have the custom for dates. But if your custom is with apples, you could address it either by bringing the dates out later, or as we said, by making ha'etz on an olive prior to hamotzi l'amin ha'etz. So now amongst the various differences in customs, even in Halab, there were the predominant custom was to serve the fruits only on the first night, right? They didn't have it on the second night. But there were those families that served it on both nights as well, even amongst Halabi families. Amongst the other Middle Eastern Jews, from what I've seen, the predominant custom is to serve it on both nights. So either or, it depends on the family custom.
Are there any opinions that say just the second night?
No, that I've never seen. The ones that say the first night means they say that the main objective is to start the year off with a Simantov. So the first night of the year is the first night of Rosh Hashanah. But the Haidah, Rabbi Haim Yosef David Azulai, was an important authority in the late 18th century. He writes to do it on both nights. And many Sephardim, many Middle Eastern Jews are in line with the Haidah. The Ben Ish Hai serves it on both nights as well. So since there are authorities that promote serving on both nights, several Halabi families and many other communities have the custom to serve it on both nights. There's also a question comes up, what do you do first? Do you say the Yiratzon and then you partake of the fruit, or do you eat the fruit or vegetable and then say Yiratzon? So from what I've seen, most say the Yiratzon and then you taste the fruit. But Hakeem Shahebar, he was an important rabbi from Halab. He went on to be the chief rabbi of Argentina. According to him, the custom of Halab, at least in his times, that's the 20th century, they ate the fruit first, and then they said the Yiratzon for all of them, not just the apple, but for all of them, they would say the eat the fruit first and then make the Yiratzon. There were also those in Halab that had the custom to serve everything before Netilat Yadayim, meaning just like we were discussing the custom throughout the year to have ha'etz and ha'adama before Netilat Yadayim. There were those that served all of the items of the Rosh Hashanah items before Netilat Yadayim. But again, the prevalent custom was after Netilat Yadayim, after Hamotzi Lechem min haaretz. So now, as we said, the original custom of having an apple was an Ashkenazic custom. And the custom was to dip the apple in honey. We see in our community, many have the custom to dip the apple in sugar, specifically white sugar. And the reason for this is that there is an opinion among certain Mikubalim, Kabbalistic rabbis, that white sugar is more appropriate than honey on the night of Rosh Hashanah. And that's because they teach that white sugar signifies hesed, kindness, as opposed to the honey, which signifies gibura, bravery. And they teach that the white sugar, hesed, kindness, is more appropriate on the nights of Rosh Hashanah, the days of judgment. And therefore we see, I would say most families in our community have the custom to use white sugar. So it's not just by accident, they didn't just substitute it. Some thought maybe they didn't have honey. No, they had honey, they had sugar. The custom of substituting for the honey with white sugar is a Middle Eastern custom based on those Mikubalim that said the white sugar is preferred. Now, in addition to dipping the apple in white sugar or honey, it's customary also when we make hamotzi, instead of dipping the bread in salt like we normally do throughout the year, we dip it in sugar. Now, there were some individuals in Halab, based again on the teachings of certain Kabbalistic rabbis, that you always have to dip the bread in salt, even on Rosh Hashanah. So they would dip the bread in salt first and then dip it in sugar. However, that was a custom of Yehidim, individuals. The custom of the majority was to substitute the salt with sugar, and that's what we find in the writings of Hakeem Avraham Hamway, who himself was a Mikubal, and he said that sugar is comparable to salt, it's a perfect substitute, and his conclusion was, Imken Yafeh min Hagam Shel Yisrael, the standard custom amongst Jewish people to use sugar instead of salt, Likbo b'Rosh Hashanah motzi b'sukar b'mkom hamelach, right? It's Yafeh min Hagam, it's an appropriate custom. He gave his approval, meaning that it's considered a complete substitute and there's no need to dip it in salt first. So again, if your family custom was always to use sugar instead of salt, there's no need to correct your custom, meaning that it's considered minhag Yisrael. It's documented in many places, and it was addressed specifically by Hakeem Avraham Hamway that that's the appropriate custom, the standard custom. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the shofar and some customs that are particular to Halab with regards to the shofar. So now, the Tiruah itself, we find that some communities blow the shofar, lululu, and others blow 222. The custom of halab is to blow lululu. The 222 we find it amongst Ashkenazim, and even some Middle Eastern communities have adopted that custom as well. But in Halab, there was not two customs, that was the Tiru'ah. Now there's also a specific custom regarding the Shibarim. So the Shibarim in Halab were shorter than the Shibarim in other communities, meaning that they, instead of blowing 3 Shibarim, which is the minimum amount of Shibarim, they would blow 4 or 5 shorter Shibarim. So we're going to discuss the reason why they added to the Shibarim and shortened them. So, according to the halakha, the opinion that we follow, the ma'aseh, the minimum length of a tiru'ah is 9 tiru'ah beats, meaning if you're blowing lu, 9 lus. That's the minimum length of a tiru'ah. You could blow more, right? There's no maximum, right? But the minimum is 9. Now, when you blow a tiru'ah, you have to precede it with a tikiyah, and then after the tiru'ah, you blow another tikiyah. So the tikiyah has to be the same size. The minimum length of a tikiyah is equivalent to the minimum length of a tiru'ah. So the tikiyah has to be the equivalent of 9 tiru'ah beats. Now, when I have a shibarim and a tiru'ah together, so the shibarim has to be the equivalent altogether between all the shibarim 9 beats, and the tiru'ah has to be 9 beats. So the tikiyah that precedes shibarim tiru'ah has to be 18 beats, because the tikiyah always has to be the equivalent of what you're using for the tiru'ah. So when you do shibarim and tiru'ah as your tiru'ah, so the tikiyah prior and the tikiyah afterwards has to be at least the equivalent of the length of 18 tiru'ah beats. So now the shibarim, if you blow 3 shibarim, they have to total 9 tiru'ah beats. So that means each shibet has to be 3 beats. And so in Halab, they didn't want to do 3 shibarim, each one 3 beats. Why? Because although the halakha that we follow is that a tiru'ah is 9 beats, Maran and Shulchan Aruch also quotes the opinion of Rashi that the minimum length of a tiru'ah is 3 beats. Right? So according to Rashi, tikiyah also has to be 3 beats. So if I make 3 shibarim, each one 3 beats, so according to Rashi, I made 3 tikiyot. Right? They're not shibarim, they're not broken. Shevet has to be broken. In order for it to be broken, it has to be less than a tikiyah. So in Halab, they wanted to follow fulfill the obligation according to both opinions, both according to what the halakha is, which is 9 beats, and according to the opinion which the halakha is not like that, that a shibarim has to be less than 3 beats. But if I blow only 3 shibarim, and each one is less than 3 beats, I won't have 9 beats altogether. So in order to make up for that fact, they would blow 4 or 5 short shibarim, right? And altogether they would have at least 9 beats, and that's how they did it. Now, it's interesting that if you look in the Bet Yosef, Maran, the author of Shulchan Aruch, prior to writing Shulchan Aruch, wrote a longer work known as the Bet Yosef. In the Bet Yosef, he says that the custom of the world is l'katzer the shibarim kol ma she'efshar, to make the shibarim as short as possible. Now, that's the custom of Halab, but the custom of the Ashkenazim, the custom even in Sham, in Damascus, is like the Ashkenazim, to make 3 longer shibarim, meaning 3 shibarim, each one 3 beats. It's really the only community that we find is the Halabi community that still does what Maran described in his time as the custom of the world. So that's something particular to the community of Halab. So now another question that I want to discuss is, what about reciting the Yagmidot? Amonai, Amonai, Kilir Ahom Behanun, reciting that at the Pitihat HaEchal, at the time that you open the Echal, before you take out the Torah, on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Now according to the Mekubalim, you're supposed to recite the Yagmidot when you open up the Echal, not only on Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, but on Shalosh Regalim as well. Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. They always recite it. According to the Pashtanim, those that are not Mekubalim, it's not appropriate to recite the Yagmidot as a prayer on Yom Tov. Right? So we find many communities that are not reciting it on Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. But what about Rosh Hashanah and Kippur? So if we look in the sources, we find several Halabi sources that say that they never recited the Yag Midot in Halab at the Petihat Heichal, not on Rosh Hashanah and not on Yom Kippur. There's a book that was composed in 1990 known as Derech Eretz. So it's basically a compilation of all the Halabi customs. So based on the notes of Hakam Selim Zafrani, Hakam Selim Zafrani was a Hazan in the Great Synagogue of Aleppo, approximately between the years of 1900 and 1950. And he had notes where he spoke about the customs of the Great Synagogue, and those notes were published in the 1980s. And there is no mention, there's no mention of Yag Midot when you open up the Heichal, not on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. And his son, Hakeem Zafrani, who's living in Eretz Yisrael today, was interviewed by the author of Derech Eretz, and he said that in Halab they did not recite the Yag Midot when they opened up the Heichal. He's speaking specifically about Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. And Hakeem Tawil as well, who's also living today in Tel Aviv in Eretz Yisrael. He's the son of Hakeem Moshe Tawil. Moshe Tawil was the chief rabbi of Halab in his time in the 1930s, the 1940s, and all of them attest to the fact that it was not customary to recite the Yag Midot when they opened up the Heichal. Mr. Haim Shayo, a good friend of mine, very knowledgeable in the customs and traditions of Halab, told me that in 1961, the Halabi community in Brazil opened their first knis, and the first day of the knis was Rosh Hashanah. 1961, Rosh Hashanah day, that was when they opened the knis. And when they got up to Petihat HaYechel, the Hazan, whoever it was, began to recite the Yag Midot, Amonai, Amonai, Tiler Hanun, and Hakeem Yitzhak Dayan was in attendance. Hakeem Yitzhak Dayan was a very knowledgeable and well-respected rabbi from Halab. His father was Hakeem Yishaya Dayan. Hakeem Yitzhak was a very close friend of Hakeem Matlub Abadi, who was an important rabbi in our community. And he immediately stopped the Hazan. He said, it's not our tradition. We don't recite the Yag Midot at Petihat HaYechel. We have to remain loyal to our traditions. And he insisted, in a very dramatic way, and he was disturbed at the suggestion not to follow tradition. He insisted that they refrain from reciting Yag Midot. So, based on all of these traditions, the tradition of Hakeem Selim Zafrani and of Hakeem Moshe Tawil and Hakeem Yitzhak Dayan, and my minyan that we have in Bet Torah, that's the early minyan on Rosh Hashanah Kippur, we don't recite Yag Midot when we open the Heichal. Now there are many that, based on our Mahzor, recite the Yag Midot. Now it's interesting that we do find some other sources amongst Halabi rabbis that suggest that we do say the Yag Midot when we open the Heichal. So we have the notes of Hakeem Yosef Shayo Abadi. So Hakeem Yosef Shayo Abadi was born in Halab in 1893. His father was Hakeem Azra Abadi, Hakeem Azra Abadi Shayo, and he was known as Rab de Rabbanan, meaning he was the rabbi that taught all the rabbis. So Hakeem Azra Abadi was the teacher of Hakeem Matlub Abadi. He was the teacher of Hakeem Moshe Tawil, who we mentioned was the chief rabbi in his time. He was the rabbi, the teacher of Hakeem Azra Atiyah, who went on to be the Rosh Yeshiva Porat Yosef. So he was a very important rabbi. This was his son, Hakeem Yosef Shayo. And he was born in Halab in 1893, and he came to Eretz Yisrael to live in Jerusalem in 1935. So when he was in Yerushalayim, he sat down and he wrote down many of the customs of Halab, and included in his writings is reciting the Yag Midot when you open up the Heichal on Rosh Kippur. We also have a letter from 1986 from Hakeem Saadeh Harari. So Hakeem Saadeh Harari was a Halabi rabbi in Mexico. He was very knowledgeable in the customs of Halab. And he received our Mahzorim that we printed here in New York, the Shalom Yerushalayim Mahzorim. They were sent to him. And he went through the Mahzorim. And in 1986, he wrote a letter with his comments, what he felt was not in line with the customs of Halab. He sent a letter to Sam Kat Alav Shalom, who was the publisher of the Shalom Yerushalayim Mahzorim. So we have the letter. And it's interesting that he objects to Yag Midot when we open up the Heichal on the night of Rosh Hashanah, on the night of Yom Kippur, But he didn't object to the Yag Midot when we open up the Hechal on the mornings of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. So it seems that there were some that did recite the Yag Midot in Halab, but that the prevalent custom in Halab was not to recite the Yag Midot, not on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. And the truth is, according to Mikubalim, it's not either or. In other words, you don't do it on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur and then not recite it on the Shalosh Regalim. It's either you go with the Mikubalim and you should recite it on all of the holidays, including the Shalosh Regalim, or you're Pashtan in this matter, and then you don't recite it even on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur.
Are there any opinions that say we should do it every Shabbat?
No, I didn't see that. And I haven't seen anyone practice that. Okay, so now I want to go on to another topic, and that's the mood of the prayers on Rosh Hashanah. So, Kavaya Yosef emphasizes the fact that the prayers of Rosh Hashanah are not supposed to be sad, they're not supposed to be melancholy, it's not supposed to bring you to cry, it's not supposed to make you mournful, right? The prayers are supposed to be pleasant, they're supposed to be happy, they're supposed to be upbeat, they're supposed to exude confidence that Borei Olam is accepting our prayers, he's accepting our teshuvah. And the reason for this is that Hakamodia is against crying in the prayers, is the fact that Rosh Hashanah is Yom Tov, and the mitzvah, the obligation of Simchat Yom Tov, being happy on Yom Tov, applies to Rosh Hashanah. And therefore, he said that we should not pray in a manner that will make people sad. And this is based on Pisukim that we see in the book of Nehemiah, where the people were gathered on Rosh Hashanah day, and they were crying. And Azra Nehemiah instructed them not to cry. Specifically told them, Al tibku, al titabelu, don't cry, don't mourn. It's not a day to be sad. Al te'atsevu, don't be sad today. Ki hadvat Adonai ma'uzikim. The joy that you experience with God on this holy day, that's your strength. So, Hakavaya Yosef is not the first one to point this out. He bases this also on the writings of the Gerah, the Gaon Vilna, also based on those Pesukim, insisted that the prayers be upbeat and insisted that the Hazan sing a pleasant tune for Kaddish, and so on and so forth. However, this brings us to a question, because we see in the writings of Rabbi Haim Vital, Rabbi Haim Vital was a student of the Arizal, the master of Kabbalah, and Rabbi Haim Vital he taught us that the Arizal himself would cry a lot in the prayers of Rosh Hashanah, and not only would the Arizal cry himself, but he taught us that the Arizal taught that anyone that's not moved to cry in the prayers of Rosh Hashanah, it's a sign that his soul is not complete, his soul is not proper, meaning there's some spiritual deficiency if he's not crying on Rosh Hashanah in the prayers. So the question is, how do we reconcile this contradiction between the Pesukim and Azra, where the people are instructed to stop crying, not to cry, that it's wrong to cry, and which is consistent with the teachings of the Gerah and Hakavaya Yosef, and what Rabbi Haim Vital is telling us based on the teachings and conduct of the Arizal. So Hakavaya Yosef, he resolves the question in the following way. He says, when the Arizal cried on Rosh Hashanah in the prayers, he didn't cry out of sadness. He wasn't depressed. He was crying because on Rosh Hashanah he reached great spiritual heights. He felt very connected to Borei Olam, and it was an emotional crying, not of sadness. So Kavaya says the prayers are not to be sad, and we're not supposed to be crying out of sadness, or we're not supposed to be mournful on that day. But if someone reaches that great spiritual heights, like the Ari and his students on the day of Rosh Hashanah, of course he's permitted to cry, because he's not crying out of sadness, but rather out of the emotions that he's feeling from his connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu on the prayers on that special day. So he says, if you're moved to cry because of that reason, then of course there's no issue with crying. But we shouldn't make people cry by designing the prayers in that way. So now, since, as we said, there's a mitzvah Simchat Yom Tov on Rosh Hashanah, applies to Rosh Hashanah, Maran Shulchan Aruch writes regarding Rosh Hashanah אוכלים ושותים ושמחים ואין מתענים בראש השנה ולא בשבת תשובה. We eat, we drink, and we rejoice, right? And we don't fast on Rosh Hashanah, and of course not on the Shabbat between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, because we're obligated to have Onik Shabbat, we're obligated to have Simchat Yom Tov, and therefore we don't fast, and not only that, we're eating meat, we're drinking wine, and we're rejoicing. However, Maran continues that halakha in the following manner. Omnam, however, lo yochelu kol sov'am, a person should not eat to his full satisfaction. Leman lo yikalu rosham, so his head doesn't become too light. He's shouldn't overindulge in eating and drinking. And the fear of God has to remain on one's face. So basically, he's telling you to eat, to drink, to enjoy, but not to overdo it, not to get carried away. A person should still maintain the proper behavior on the day of judgment. He shouldn't get out of control or speak in a way that's inappropriate. And so he has to find the happy medium between Simchat Yom Tov and keeping within the proper mood of the day, which of course it is. It's the day of judgment. It's a solemn day. So there's a teaching that they capture it with Gilu Bir'ada. Rejoice, be happy, but still remain God-fearing. And that's the goal of the days of Rosh Hashanah. So as we said, the prayers are upbeat, the meals are festive, and we also wear clothes in honor of Yom Tov. Maran writes that on Erev Rosh Hashanah, the day before Rosh Hashanah, one should prepare clean clothing in honor of the holiday, right? And one should also take a haircut in honor of the holiday, meaning we're not supposed to be worrisome, we're not supposed to be depressed, we're not supposed to have this attitude that because we're being judged that we don't want to take a haircut, we don't want to groom ourselves, that we don't want to eat, we don't want to be happy. So the day is you're supposed to have a confident attitude, you're supposed to have Simchat Yom Tov, so you prepare yourself like you do for any other Yom Tov. You take a haircut, you shave, you prepare your suit, it should be pressed, it should be clean. And as we said, the meals and the prayers all should be in accordance with the standards for Yom Tov.
Where do we get the custom of not looking at the Hazan as he blows the shofar?
That one I'm not prepared to answer. Okay. So now, what about sleeping during the day of Rosh Hashanah? So there is a custom that many people have not to sleep during the day on Rosh Hashanah. This is not something that we find in Maran, Shulchan Aruch. It's not something that we find in Rambam. But we do find it in the writings of Rabbi Moshe Israelish. That's known as Ramah. He was an Ashkenazic authority who appended notes to Shulchan Aruch. And he brings this custom based on a statement that's found in the Talmud Yerushalmi, that when one sleeps on the days of Rosh Hashanah, his luck will sleep for that year. Now Rabbi Haim Vital, again, the student of the Arizal, taught that according to his teacher, the Ari, one should not sleep in the first part of the day. That's the time when one is being judged. But after midday, meaning after the midpoint between sunrise and sunset, not only is it permissible for one to sleep, but the Arizal himself used to sleep from that time on. So this year, midday is approximately 12:48 on the days of Rosh Hashanah. So according to the Ari, after 12:48, if one's tired, one could take a nap. Chama Yosef writes that there were other authorities as well, other rabbis as well, that used to take a nap in the afternoon on Rosh Hashanah. Even on the first day, all the more so on the second day. Chama Yosef's opinion was that if somebody is excessively tired, and if he refrains from taking a nap, he's not going to be able to study Torah, he's not going to be able to pray with the proper concentration when he goes to Minhan Arbit. When he sits down on the second night, he's not going to be able to have Simchat Yom Tov, he's not going to be able to be happy and enjoy his meal. In such a case, he should take a short nap in order to refresh himself, and then when he wakes up, he can do Avodat Hashem, he could serve Hashem in the proper way. And he also pointed out that Kol HaYoshev Batel Ki Yashin Dameh. If someone is sitting and he's not doing anything, it's equivalent of sleeping, meaning that which we said not to sleep on Rosh Hashanah doesn't mean just to stay awake and to talk or to sit in a chair and be awake. It means that you're supposed to involve yourself in Torah or Tefillah or something that's spiritually productive. So if a person's gonna stay up and talk, and often conversations lead to Lashon Hara or something else that's inappropriate, that's worse than sleeping. So everyone has to govern himself accordingly in order to maximize what he's doing on the days of Rosh Hashanah. So after midday, as we said, if one feels the necessity to nap, it's going to help him. It's going to help him serve Hashem better throughout the rest of the day. Then he should take a nap. If he's able to go the whole day learning, reading Tehillim, or praying with Kavanah, all without a nap, it's praiseworthy. But if he's not able to, he's not able to. Ahava Yosef also addresses the question, and the Ben Ish Hai writes that since the judgment is based on the Arizal judgments in the first part of the day, that yes, you could take a nap after midday, but that you should get up before dawn. So Ahava Yosef doesn't follow the Ben Ish Hai in this matter. He says that at night, of course, you can go to sleep. The whole issue is going to sleep in the day. So he says if you went to sleep at night when it was permissible to go to sleep, you don't have to interrupt that sleep because day came. He compares it to the sukkah. Let's say it was raining one night. So you went to sleep in the house. You're patur from the sukkah. If it stops raining in the middle of the night, you don't have to get up and go to the sukkah. So he says if a person, by waking up so early, now he's going to be tired during his prayers. And, it's very burdensome upon him to wake up so early. It's difficult. So if he went to sleep at night, he continues sleeping until he wakes up at his normal time to be on time for his minyan. He says that the main issue is that a person's up and it's the day of Rosh Hashanah, and instead he feels as he has nothing better to do than to go to sleep. He doesn't have any learning to do. He doesn't have any reading to do. Wasn't want to do anything. So that's the issue. But if a person went to sleep at the proper time, he doesn't have to interrupt that sleep in order to get up early. That's the opinion of Ahava Yosef. So I want to address one more question, and that's the subject of Tosh Lif. Right. So on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, it's customary after we pray Mincha to recite the last three Pesukim in the book of Micha that starts Mi El Kamocha, and included in the continuation of the second Pesuk, we have the Pesuk B'Tashlich B'Msulot Yam Kol Hatotam. And it's customary also to read a piece of Zohar with it, and there's a prayer from the Haidah that they read afterwards, a beautiful prayer. And there's a common misconception amongst many people. If you speak to people when they're going to Tosh Lif, what are they going to do? They're going to throw away their sins. So we know that you can't stand near water and read Pesukim or Zohar or Tefillot and rid yourself of your sins. If you read the Pasuk, what's the Tosh Lif? Who's it going on? It's not going on the people. It's going on Hashem. Hashem is the one that's going to throw away the sins of the people. Meaning He's going to forgive them for their sins. When does Borei Olam forgive for sins? When we make Teshuvah. So the reciting of the Tosh Lif is another opportunity to make Teshuvah. Meaning we come to Borei Olam and we ask Him to please throw away our sins. Please accept our Teshuvah. Accept our prayers. Accept our Teshuvah. If a person didn't really come to make Teshuvah until he comes to Tosh Lif, it's an excellent time. Ahava Yosef says, what's the proper thought of Teshuvah? You just think that you sincerely intend not to repeat specific transgressions that you made during the year. So if you do that during the Shofar, you should do it during the Shofar. If you didn't do it during the Shofar, you aren't able to have that sincere feeling during the Shofar, you could have it during the Tosh Lif. It's another opportunity for us to make Teshuvah and to ask Borei Olam to accept our Teshuvah and to accept our prayers. I'm just going to conclude with one more point, and that's that the Hakeem tell us that on the days of Rosh Hashanah, it's important to conduct ourselves in a proper way. Meaning, we should avoid anger. We should avoid insulting people. We should avoid embarrassing people. And sometimes it happens that we're on the receiving end. Someone insulted us. Someone embarrassed us. We should be very careful to let it go. Don't respond. If you see arguments about the brew, don't let it happen. Meaning that we're judged for the way we are at that time. So we don't want on the days of Rosh Hashanah to come to this improper conduct. And not only that, when we let things go, that gives us merit in front of Borei Olam, meaning that we weren't perfect during the year. If we're easy with people when they offend us, Borei Olam will be easier with us in our judgment. So in order to merit a good judgment, we have to be easy with people, we have to be pleasant with people. The best way to say it is that it's more important than dipping the bread or the apple in sugar is that you should be like sugar. Be easy with the people, be pleasant, and with that, we'll all merit a great year. More questions?
Yeah. I was always curious to know when the proper time to blow to the Wagadola was. I believe the Shalom Yerushalayim goes back and forth in different
Right.
editions.
So when I grew up in the community, the standard custom was you said Barehu, then you blew to the Wagadola, and then we continue on the Shabbat. That's how I grew up in the community. I'm talking about the late 70s and the 1980s. What went on before that, I don't know. I know the Shalom Yerushalayim change it and change it back, but that's what I'm used to. Any other questions?
How many times are you supposed to do Hatarat Nedarim?
So the custom of Halab is to do it 3 times. We do it on the 19th of Ab, which is 40 days before Rosh Hashanah. We do it Erev Rosh Hashanah and Erev Yom Kippur. Now, since it's difficult for people to come on the weekdays, it's customary to do it on the Saturday night prior to those dates. So we did it tonight instead of Erev Rosh Hashanah. We're doing it next Saturday night instead of Erev Yom Kippur. We did it the Saturday night prior to the 19th of Ab as opposed to the 19th of Ab. So you do it 3 times.